Oh, you know what that means, boys and girls.
Walkers, crawlers, blood, guts, and all that is zombie. It's time for Tony and Josh to recap this week's AMC's The Walking Dead.
Now, Josh, I'm going to ask you. Now, don't answer, because if you have an answer, I want you to wait to the end of this bonus segment to answer this question.
Got my little clicky pen here. I'm going to write down my answer.
So, it's like, is this your card? I got it. So, this Walking Dead bonus segment, and we're talking tonight about episode 4 of season 6. Here's Not Here. God knows what that means.
Here, man.
God knows what that means. And that's your question, Josh. What the hell were they talking about when they said, here's not here? And I want you to...
That's an easy one.
Well, that's fine. I want you to answer it at the end of the show whenever we've gone through all this, because I didn't make the connection.
Well, I did. I'm writing down my answer.
Okay.
And it's basically just 2 words, so it'll be real easy.
Okay.
This episode was certainly interesting. We have another flashback episode, if you will, a little look into another character. Now, this is the second of season 6 that we've had some layers of the onion peeled back on a character. 2 episodes ago, we had one JSS just survived somehow, and we got the full story more or less on the love interest of Coral. And that was interesting, although it was more of just about a 5 or 10 minute little bit of something before the rest of the show. This one, however, was all Morgan all the time, except we did see one familiar face in this, and that was a new character that came and gone, and his name was Eastman, and we've seen him in a lot of stuff since 1993, 96, whenever his IMDb was started.
First time I saw him was in the I want to say Jim Carrey, not Jim Carrey.
No, Drew Carey, the Drew Carey show. He was I think Drew's brother.
Oh, that's right. I knew he was the boyfriend of Drew's arch nemesis, Mimi, I think.
Oh, dear God, she had a boyfriend? I couldn't remember.
Yep, that was they were boyfriend and girlfriend. I think that was it was hilarious.
Boy, talk about things out of nightmares. That woman, Jesus.
Yeah. Did you ever see the movie Gothica with Halle Berry? You remember him?
Oh, yeah.
You remember him in it, right?
Oh yeah. Now he played a very bad man.
Very, very bad man, and a man of the law. So anyway, those are the only 2 things I've ever seen him in before this. Always enjoyed him, but I've never seen his acting abilities at this level. And I thought
certainly
he did
not.
a wonderful
I would have
job.
to agree that the level of acting that we saw in this episode was certainly above par. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, there wasn't a lot of zombie action in this movie or in this episode. It was kind of slow. Yada, yada, yada. Look, I would have to say this is probably one of the better produced episodes that we've seen in several seasons.
Wonderful story. And that's
absolutely.
And boys and girls.
I'm sorry to interrupt. It was even more visually appealing.
Yeah. Even the music was nice and soothing and all.
Yeah, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I think that I don't know if you noticed or not, Morgan was, I guess he set the house on fire the strip mall that he was living in. He set that on fire and he left, and he's going out in the woods. And I didn't quite understand, and I guess I still don't understand what he was going through. Plainly put, he was just batshit crazy, and in his mind, the only thing for him to do was to kill anything that moves.
And boy, did he ever! He went on this killing spree early on in his storyline. We'll call it. And this was after, boy, what was it? Season 1, season 2, when he was up in his little apartment, and we saw just how kind of crazy he was getting.
And he couldn't make some sort of reference to a peanut bar while he was burning the place down. I mean, I don't know if you were thinking that or not, Josh, but I was thinking, where's my peanut bar? That was
I
hilarious.
I was really kind of stunned through this whole episode.
Well,
Now,
you know,
look,
very
we're
good
coming
acting
off.
by Morgan too. I mean, he did a very good job. It was
Well, he is a
really
good actor
strange.
into himself. We had two big powerhouses as far as acting talent goes in this show and in this episode rather, and it was very evident early and often. Now, some of the stuff we saw early was flashback stuff we'd seen from other episodes, like Morgan in his apartment going batshit crazy.
Mhm.
And some of the other stuff was similar to stuff we've seen in previous episodes, but we get to see a little bit more of it. And there was something that kept happening during this episode that the writers at AMC they've been trying different techniques when a person is remembering something, or they're having a vision, or they're having a dream. The cinematography changes, and in this episode there was no different. There was this camera effect. Tony, can you describe it when Morgan was having his memories or something, or when he was kind of looking at remembering things through his own eyes? You know what I'm talking about?
No, I don't. The only effect that I remember is whenever he was enraged and he was focused on killing something. And I was going to mention that one. You're not talking about the almost like tunnel vision with.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay. So I didn't really see that in a memory sense. I saw that whenever he was like he was hunting when he was hunting Eastman. Whenever he was not killing the zombies, but de-animating them. He had almost like this tunnel vision, but it had kind of a boom to it. I don't know if they may have had some audio boom in there, but to me it was like his heart was racing. And you know how whenever you get hyped up on adrenaline, you can feel your heart, and it will actually affect your vision, and you can see your heart beating in your eyes. It affects your vision. Yeah. So I kind of took it to mean that he was getting tunnel vision, and he was just extremely agitated, and he was on, seek, destroy, and kill.
Very much so, especially when he came to the there was one point when he was running through the woods, or two men were chasing him through the woods.
Oh, and they were up to no good. I mean,
yeah,
it was bad what happened, but they were up to no good.
They were definitely out to get him for what he had, whatever
that weapon,
that may
if nothing
be.
Else.
And if nothing else, and he sort of outruns them a little bit, but then stops short, and just, I mean, ends up dismembering these guys. I mean, he takes the end of a staff or a large stick or whatever his walking stick was at the time, and just right through the soft tissue underneath the guy's jawline, right through the neck, right up into the skull, and just beats the living snot out of the other guy for no reason. I mean, they were chasing him. Obviously, they wanted to hurt him, but it was certainly a different Morgan than we are used to. The Morgan that we are used to, other than from season 2 or whatever, besides the crazy part, is a very calm, a very reserved Morgan, a very skilled Morgan nonetheless, but one who is very, very laid back, very, very easygoing, more or less.
Well, and as we learn, that's a facade. The inner turmoil is nothing like what you see on the outside.
No, and in fact, the show opens up with Morgan visiting the wolf, which I didn't know that he had taken prisoner. I thought he was dead. I thought he just discovered the guy. And it was kind of, I thought he was clearing this house, and I remember him having that fight with the guy, right, and he had like knocked him out or beat him.
Didn't he say I'm sorry right before he hit him?
I think so.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
So.
And it related, of course, to this episode. Well,
and something about like the prisoner recalling that he wanted to take everything Morgan had. It's like, well, and then they had a previous encounter in the woods, I think last season. And he said, he's like, all right, well, you want everything I got? Here it is. Every last bit. And he's basically just forcing his life story upon this guy at this point. Pretty much, at least life story from the point of when the world all went to hell and back, and from that point forward. And that's kind of how we delve into this flashback episode with Morgan, is him sort of telling this story. And he's not narrating it by any means or anything like that. We just sort of find out what happens. And throughout this blood rage that he has after he leaves his apartment and goes on this killing spree, he's going through the woods and he hears a goat, and he tracks down the noise and he goes up to where there's this like house in the woods,
Very
and
nice.
it's actually a very
Solar
very
panels
nice house,
and yeah,
a very very beautiful log cabin of sorts.
dare
And,
I say snazzy.
yeah, I mean the architecture was definitely appealing, followed very well with the visual feel of the show, of the how the show was. It fit the mood of the show very well. And here's this goat in this little clearing, in this little fence, barely tied up at all, like not much more than a shoestring, holding this thing. And of course he's thinking, oh, food, yeah, finally, this ought to make a good meal. And out of nowhere,
And he's being very quiet because he realizes this is a residence and somebody tied the goat up. So
yeah, this goat just didn't get here and has been here this entire time, because if he heard it from 50 yards away, well, any walker within 100 yards would definitely would have made their way to this thing and have eaten it by now. Because goats aren't very good at protecting themselves, I don't think. Well, so from a booming voice from the woods, more or less, hey, you might not want to do that. It'd be a good idea if you just kind of went on your way.
that doesn't belong to you.
That's what it was. That doesn't belong to you. That ain't yours. And that is Eastman, which we later find out. I can't remember exactly how it came. I think Morgan heard the voice. He didn't go after the goat after all. He was more interested in taking care of this loose end, I think.
Well, he was
on a mission to this point of killing whoever it was that was talking to him at this point.
And I guess I can kind of see that too. I mean, especially if you look and see what happened with those two guys that were stalking him in the woods. So
he's in this kill or be killed mentality.
Yeah, it's kill. Yeah. It really is kill or be killed type thing. So yeah, I guess I can kind of see it. You would like to think that everybody would get along and there would be a kumbaya and a hug at the end of each evening, but not so much. So I guess people get a little crazy when things get crazy.
So Morgan, still very, very crazy, in fact, is getting closer and closer to where the voice is coming from. And he ends up finding himself, getting the snot knocked out of him.
Yeah, even though he goes after him. And I want to mention this, even though he goes after him with a fully automatic M16 weapon, and he bests him with a nice club to the back of the head. Yep. And I thought I would mention this. Josh and I were talking about proper trigger position. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called. You don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to shoot.
Proper trigger finger
trigger control.
Trigger control. Sure, trigger control. There you go.
So we were talking about trigger control in the Tony and Josh episode tonight, 93. And I just wanted to mention this about what Morgan, who obviously doesn't know anything about guns and assault weapons, because he closed one eye to look through.
Yes, I saw that too, and I was like, "You don't do that."
No,
especially when you're trying to clear a property and you're hugging the perimeter of a building or something like that. And you're trying to skirt around
vision.
Things. You have both eyes wide open.
That holographic sight is meant to acquire targets, especially fast-moving targets, that are close to you quickly, and you need your complete field of vision, and you just use that holographic sight to aim through the one eye that's in front of it. So it's just like when Rick goes to shoot that hand cannon, and it's a foot lower than the bullet's going to hit, a foot lower than what it's supposed to, because he's got that droop.
Yeah.
So it's people that are actors that don't know anything about guns. Now some of them may, but Morgan wasn't doing it right, and maybe he was just instructed to do it that way because the majority of people think that's the way you do because it's a scope, but it's not a scope. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that I saw that and I went, oh.
Now, Tony and I do find these little Easter eggs, if you will, every now and again, little holes to poke in storylines or plot lines or how things really go or how they would go and stuff like that. And so we're sorry for those diehard fans out there. We will pick some holes in some things every now and again.
Move along.
Yeah. Well, Morgan wakes up inside of a cell inside the cabin. And
did that seem strange to you that there was a cell in that house?
Nothing surprises me at this point, really. Far as
it
what
was
you
like,
see
oh,
inside of.
how handy.
Yeah, right. Well, so I mean, and this is a full-on what you would consider to be a jail cell, albeit a little bit, Western-ish.
The only thing missing from this house and jail cell was Andy Griffith.
Yeah, really.
And Barney Fife.
Really. So, but you can tell it's definitely an afterthought. This wasn't something that was built into the house during its construction. It is very evident that this is an afterthought.
But boy, it's a nice one. I mean,
yeah, it really is. Very, very well made. Well, Morgan is inside the cell. And for the next pretty much 15 minutes, all we hear him say is 2 words. I mean, he's begging, he's yelling, he's screaming these 2 words.
But wait. It starts off with, "Hi, what's your name?"
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Eastman introduces himself, and I figured I'd let you, kind of get your your shit together before I start bugging you. So what's your name, anyways? And Morgan's response is,
"Kill me." Over and over and over again.
Over.
Before he starts on the rant of "kill me," though, Eastman says, "That's a stupid name. That's dangerous. I'd change that."
Yeah. So we get very early and often here this idea that Eastman, he's got a great sense of humor.
He's a smart ass.
A very easy to like character. They made it very easy to really be impassionate towards this character because, I mean, one, he's out in the woods. This guy's obviously a survivalist. We learn a lot about him very early as he starts engaging Morgan and trying to carry on conversation and talk with him and stuff. And
this is why this show had to be slow.
I mean,
it was all about talking. It was narration, but it was narrated by the characters, or at least by Eastman. I mean, Morgan wasn't saying anything other than "kill me."
Really. Well, we find that Eastman used to be a forensic psychiatrist. In fact, his job was to talk to people who have done very, very bad things.
Heinous.
Heinous. And in this day and age, in the world of The Walking Dead, a lot of people have done a lot of bad things. And he asked Morgan, what he did before the fall of civilization, as it were. And Morgan, still kind of in his craziness, says, "I clear."
10-4, good buddy.
Mongo smash.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
it's not much more than that.
That had to be an interesting
that gets
script.
Anywhere near me, I kill them.
Could you imagine being on The Walking Dead, making several, tens of thousands of dollars per episode at least, getting your script and reading through, and you seeing the person that you're in the scene with and yours. It's la 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 la. I clear. La 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 la. I guess if you look at it by price per word,
Well, I love
good.
Easton's response to this because Morgan is all I'm just die hard, man. I'm gonna kill you. I'm kill everything. Kill.
Yeah.
And Eastman's like, well, that's the biggest load of horse shit I've ever heard. I love this guy, right?
Yeah, he calls a spade for a spade. Certainly does. But it was very interesting watching that and that transformation. And just as it seems, I don't want to jump ahead too much, but this "kill me" thing, it repeats throughout the entire episode.
It kind of does.
It's not a situation where, he was friendly to me. He gave me some food. He gave me a book to read. I got to pet his goat. Now I'm okay. He was not okay. He was crazy from the beginning to the end. He was only slightly less crazy as it went on. And that's got to be realistic. It's a horrifying experience to lose your family and to be involved in a world like this. You're not going to get better over an episode.
Well, shortly after this, we see Eastman toss Morgan a book. And he starts going in this philosophy thing, and humans aren't built to kill.
Yeah.
Vets coming back. They're messed up from the stuff that they had to do. Humans just are not wired to kill.
Mm-mm.
So when we do, it starts messing with us and stuff like that. And he's like, this book, and the book is the title on the book is the Art of Peace. Is what it is.
Yeah.
and kind of
A
like
bookend
the
set for the Art of War. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So this is the other side. It's obviously much smaller.
War and Peace.
But he says that by the way, the cell door it's not locked. You can leave whenever you want.
No, you got two choices. Yeah, you got two choices. And I thought it was cool. He says you can leave or you can crash on the couch. Not, or you can stay. It was like, hey bro, you can crash on the couch, man.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really
we'll try and find you another way.
I thought that was really cool the way he said that, or you can crash on the couch.
Yeah. No, this guy is super down to earth. I mean, This is the kind of guy that everybody wants to have a beer with.
Right.
I mean, very, very relatable. Well, of course, Morgan decides that he doesn't want to take choice A or choice B. He has his own choice, C, and he charges at Eastman, and they have a nice little battle.
Yep.
And of course, there's a piece of drywall that has some child's artwork on it that's hanging on the wall that gets broken. There's furniture that gets overturned and stuff that gets broken.
That quite almost got him killed. Almost got Morgan killed.
Just about. Well, Eastman certainly can handle himself, and he very well so handles Morgan as well, and pretty much dispatches him. And it says, I gave you a choice. You can stay and crash on the couch, or you can leave. I will not allow you to kill me.
Mm-hmm.
Plain and simple. I mean, it's just, and you believe him with every utterance of his words. You believe every breath that came out of him.
Well, I mean, he's
not going to let.
He's got some balls to walk up behind a guy with an automatic weapon that's on, the seek and destroy. I mean, he times it perfectly and hits in the back of the head with a stick. I mean, would you have the guts to go up on somebody with an automatic weapon? I mean, anything could happen.
Well, Eastman picks up the broken artwork and he takes off back into the kitchen or whatever. Morgan returns to the cell.
It doesn't do A or B. He again picks C.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to do either. And he actually closes the cell door with some gusto as well. Obviously, he's kind of pissed. Well, Eastman kind of goes into this whole spiel about Aikido and how he learned Aikido and when and how he uses it and all that sort of stuff. And that's what he used to defeat Morgan. Mm-hmm. And he starts going on about this rabbit foot and this other stuff and how rabbit foot and Aikido pretty much changed his life.
Yeah, the daughter gave him a rabbit's foot, and he actually got into Aikido because of the rabbit foot. I forgot the connection, but if it hadn't been for her giving him the rabbit foot, he would have not taken the Aikido lessons, and he would not have been able to keep from being killed the first time.
Yeah, exactly. So definitely a little interesting tidbit of information there. So the next morning, the next day or whatever, there's obviously several days that go by, and Eastman has this regular routine, and we see several times Morgan sort of watching Eastman as he does this morning routine, and there's all sorts of little things that go on behind this, little subtle things like before we found that the door was unlocked, Morgan he kind of disassembles a zipper and he's using this piece of metal to scrape away some wood, and he's trying to, he might have a chance of escape if he can just get this piece of wood off and it's one bar out of its hole and all this other stuff, and here, he might have a chance of escaping, and doesn't matter, the door's open.
Yeah, there was actually a line towards the end that the goat figured out that the door wasn't locked. And Eastman actually gave Morgan the benefit of the doubt. And he knew, but he gave him the benefit of the doubt, or at least an honorable way out. Said Tabitha the goat figured out the door was open like you did. And Morgan says, I didn't know it was unlocked.
Yeah.
So the goat was doing better than him. Certainly not smarter, just not as focused on killing anything that moved.
Well,
so
Morgan,
one of the interesting stories.
That book. Well, I wanted to get into that book just really quickly because he opens up that book and there's a handwritten note on the very first page that we see, and the basically stating that the goal of Aikido is to completely avoid killing even the most evil of people. And that sort of is the mantra. That is the moral of this story, if you will. The sort of the credo that at this point there's a decision that's going to be made later on in the episode that Morgan ends up taking, and he takes this decision to completely avoid killing even the most evil of people.
And the interesting story that I was about to say is the story that Eastman related is really the reason why he was there in that cabin. There was a very, very evil person from some 800 and almost 900 people that he had counseled that were either in prison or PTSD, had done a range, people that had done a range of things that he had only ever met one truly evil person. And this person, which I think they really went out on a limb naming this person, very interesting name. It kind of sounds like something you'd hear from somebody in Dallas. It was Crichton Dallas Wilton. I think I'm pronouncing those things right. And he was in prison, and he was just a sociopath. And he was very charming, but he had done a lot of really bad things, and he was basically talking his way out on early parole whenever Eastman realized who he was and what he was, and that it was going to be his mission in life to make sure that Crichton Dallas Wilton never left prison.
Right. It was basically his testimony. It was his power. He had the decision. It was going to be, the judge ultimately had the decision, but it was going to be based upon this man's professional testimony.
Sure. So Crichton realized about the same time that that Eastman realized what Crichton was. Crichton realized that Eastman knew, and he attacked Eastman. Now, of course, we don't see any of this. This is all related
this
by
is all just,
Eastman
recap.
relating this in a story to Morgan. And because of the Aikido, Eastman was able to break the chokehold, much like Morgan had on him in the cabin, and keep from being killed by Crichton. And he did exactly what he tried to do, kept him in prison. Well, almost, because
he did keep him in prison,
Crichton
just
broke
not
out
for very long.
And when he broke out, he traveled to Eastman's home and killed his wife and child.
Yeah.
Covered in blood, he walks to the local police department, turns himself in, goes back to prison, and is soon back out off of Route 89 planting and gardening flowers. His life had changed.
It was like a work crew sort of thing with, he basically had it really easy. No pound me in the ass, maximum security prison. No, he was out on work release, basically getting to play amongst the flowers on the side of the freeway.
Same thing he was doing before he murdered Eastman's family. And he stated the only reason he broke out was to mess up Eastman's life.
Yep.
So we find out why the jail cell is there, because Eastman built it, because he was going to go grab that guy, bring him to the cabin in the woods, and kill him. So I thought it was very interesting whenever Morgan said, so what did you do? Did you do it? Did you bring him here and starve him to death? And he says, I have come to believe that all life is important, sacred, something along those lines. And the first time
all life is precious. I've come to believe that all life is precious. And I think he repeats himself a couple of times.
Well, and Morgan looks at him I can't remember if he doesn't say anything disrespectful or rude, but it's like he says it again, and he's not answering the question. Which, if you think about it, that's what Aikido is: redirection.
Redirection, exactly.
And he wasn't answering the question. But Morgan, crazy as he is, instead of saying, you're a lying sack of shit, you did do something, he says, what is it? He said, you're very good. You're very good.
You're very good with the redirection or something like that, or redirecting. Or he makes a comment
you're
about
good,
it.
You're good. And he looks at him funny. He goes, you're good at redirecting. In other words, that's much better than you're a liar.
Yeah.
So, and then it's interesting because you can kind of see Morgan is learning his lesson of Aikido very well because he's redirecting. So,
well, Eastman's got this idea that they need to do some scavenging. They're pretty well set up, but they can't.
Well, they're going on a trip.
Stay there forever.
Yeah, they're going on a road trip, which I thought was funny. He barely knew this guy, and he's like, "Hey, we're getting ready to go on a road trip. We need to gather up some supplies." So they go out. I mean, he's like, he tries to get him to go out.
He's talking about the specific list of things. He's, crowbar and, gloves and rope. And I mean, it
sounds like a good idea.
Sounds like, stuff you'd find in a stalker's trunk. But
a Boy Scout, if you can find one.
Yeah. So, and Morgan's like, well, I've got all that back at my old camp. So they go on a little mission to go ahead to Morgan's old campground to retrieve the supplies. Now, this is the campground that we saw him early in the episode setting up with all the stakes in a circle. He set up his little perimeter.
Well, it's much like the stakes that he had set up at the strip mall.
That's right, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some flashback. Morgan is kind of, he had come out of his shell a little bit. Morgan was kind of becoming a normal person for the most part. And we get into this little circle, and Eastman kind of sees this, what used to be a pile of bodies that has been burning and burning and burnt and added to and burnt some more, and this big, huge, gigantic pile of ash, basically. And well, Morgan's definitely been busy, as we saw,
doing a lot of writing, including
he sees the writing.
Here,
and he sees the writing, and there's all sorts of writing, like clear, which is what Morgan used to write. He would write in zombie blood or burnt stick end, clear, and here's not here, and things like that. Well, what happens? Morgan ends up kind of having a bit of a breakdown, and I can't remember what sparked that off.
Well, Eastman asks, he says, you've lost somebody, you've lost some people, some family. And Morgan says, yes, I have. And he says, no, say their names. And he says the name of his wife and child, Dwayne, and not Serena, but something along those lines.
I don't remember.
And so I think that is what, because it opens the wound. I mean, that's one of the things that is hurting him the most is his lost family. He was unable to protect them. Then when his wife turned into a zombie, he was unable to take care of her by killing her. So right. It reopened a wound and put him back into that feel.
Well, here is where I'm going to answer your question that you asked of me at the top of the show. Eastman orders Morgan to practice his Aikido forms. He's like, forms now. And Morgan's like, not here, not here. This isn't a good spot or whatever. And Walker kind of approaches the area, and Morgan's ready. He gets ready. He's got his staff and everything, but then he realizes that this is one of the guys that he choked to death. This is one of the two men,
that young man
that were chasing him in the forest earlier in the episode, and he killed the one. The other one, he just beat up and choked to death. He didn't do anything but choke him to death.
Mm-hmm.
So the guy obviously came back to unlife. And so this is the zombie. He's like, geez, I think he's having this internal realization. I did this to you. I made you a zombie or whatever. And he kind of freezes or whatever. And right at the very last second, Eastman does some redirection and gets Morgan out of the way, but not before he is bitten in the side by the zombie.
Yep.
So to answer your question, about here, here's not here, and what does that mean? Well, here is not here, meaning like the not here. This when he said not here, well, here is not here, and I think Eastman even says that. And he's, because Morgan is crying at this point, it's just like, oh man, I just doomed you basically. And he's basically yelling at Eastman. He's like, I told you, I said not here. Well, that's the thing, Morgan. Eastman replies, here's not here. And so it's kind of a thing that is mental. What you perceive, what your belief is of a place, and what that holds to you sentimentally or emotionally. And here being, where his little camp was, and in the state of mind that he was in because of what had just happened, where he was and where his mind was two different places, I believe, meaning that part of him was in one spot, part of him was in another. If not real, but just hypothetically speaking here. And so that's where the here's not here. And then that's where that comes from and how that works into this.
I have to tell you, with the here's not here written on the rock before this whole adventure began, and then coming back and then the here's not here. I'm a fairly smart fellow, but I have not pieced it together. I thought that perhaps it was something, some saying or something that had a meaning that I was unfamiliar with, but I'm still not following it, Josh. That's why I found the here's not here very confusing and still do. Hey, I thought I'd mention this real quick. So the story ends with Morgan back into the here and now, talking to the wolf. I forget the gentleman's name. He has a nice set of yellow teeth though, and you're there. You experience a moment of hope, of brief hope, whenever the wolf says, "So do you think that I could change, or I could this could relate to me in some way? This would be something for me to be able to do?" And Morgan says, I think so. And then you see the evil come up out of the man's face, and a bit of I get the feeling that Morgan did reach him at least enough to for the wolf to say, "You may notice I'm shaking a little bit, fever," and then he raises up his shirt and shows where he's been injured, and I would assume he's been bitten or
no. To me, it looks like a cut, like somebody.
It did to me as well.
He went after somebody. It looks very much like a machete wound. It's long and it's thin. It doesn't look like a bite to me. Yeah. It very much looks like a slice or a very deep cut. It's definitely a very serious laceration.
Well, then I think maybe the Walking Dead writers are doing a bit of aikido to us, because when he said the fever and the shaking and the sweating, well, he didn't say fever, but he said shaking effect and the fever, the shaking, or the shaking and the sweating. It meant to me that he had been bitten by a zombie and he was going to die. So it didn't make any difference about whether he changed his life at this point or not. And you could be right. It could just be a cut. And
he says, if I don't die, I'm going to have to kill you, Morgan.
Right.
I'm going to have to kill every person here, or something along those lines. And those were the last words that we hear from this wolf guy. And I didn't. Now here's something that I didn't know until I read the AMC recap, in that this is actually a prison that they have set up, and we kind of see that Morgan leaves this room or whatever, locking this like metal gate type door that is built over what looks to be like a basement entrance into another house.
Yeah,
and they call it a prison not Victoria. Geez, the name of the town, Alexandria.
Right.
It's Alexandria's prison, so to speak, that they have set up, and I didn't realize that that's what the intent was.
I thought it was the house,
Alexandria's makeshift prison cell.
I thought it was either the house that they fought in, but it was very there was no furnishings.
That's what I had originally thought as well. And this was the house that they fought in.
Yeah. Then I thought, well, maybe it's a house that's not occupied by anybody, and he has him in there. But I thought it was interesting how Morgan hesitated before he locked the cell door, so to speak.
Well, because this kind of, I think that was a hail back to his last encounter with Eastman and that zombie.
Well,
if the
cell door wasn't locked.
He can't kill the guy because of his beliefs.
Right.
But locking that gate is essentially, sentencing him to death, because he can't get out. He's going to starve to death, most likely.
Oh, and
he's going to turn into a zombie.
You can come back and give him food and stuff. I mean, you don't have to just lock him in and walk away. You're just protecting the rest of the camp from this person. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. And I wanted to point out one thing. I don't know if you caught it or not. I saw it twice, so I have the benefit of perhaps seeing it more than once. During the fight scene between Morgan and Eastman, did you happen to notice that Eastman's staff had a very rubbery reaction? It was after Morgan came up off the couch and he redirected him to the floor, and he had the staff in his left hand and it was coming down, and the thing bent back a good 6 or 8 inches.
I didn't see that. I'll have to go back and check that out.
So it was
these are
funny.
the little jewels that you miss if you only see it once, and you're not paying attention.
So anyway, we're going to see what happens next week. And I think
so. Hey, I got a sneak peek at next week's episode, and that's I thought was pretty interesting, really. I got to find my my notes of where I put all that stuff. Here it is. So the episode 5 is going to be called Now, and rightly so, because I think it's about time we get back to the here and now.
Yes.
So 2 episodes of looking in the past. I think it's time that we get back to the present, and that's the title of the next show or the next episode. Now, so obviously a clue that we are going to be in present time.
Yep, back to the here and now.
And there we get a little bit of an inside glimpse into Jessie. And this is the girl that Rick kind of has a little bit of a crush on.
Well, she cut his hair.
Yeah. And we hear a very poignant line: "If we don't fight, we die."
Yeah,
and it's like I wanted things to be different, back then, or something. And we kind of hear this. We basically get the idea that Jessie might have a more rugged side to her than we have been led to believe.
Well, all you have to do is be almost killed and have to take a pair of scissors and stab somebody to death.
Well, we also see that Deanna, the sort of the town's mayor of sorts, is at the wall, and she's up at the top, and there's kind of like this lookout point, and she sees this plaque, and it says Panel 1, and it has her husband's name. It has Reg's name. And we kind of hear her, we see her kind of like, looking over things and kind of doing this little pondering thing, whatnot. And we start hearing this volume increasing of a hushed conversation. And it's Michonne, and she's talking with Sasha and Maggie. And as Deanna kind of pans her vision over towards where that conversation is happening, we start hearing more and more of it. And we start hearing basically the same, Michonne repeating the same directions that Rick had told the group about, you've got to, if they're not going to make it, you just have to go on and leave them behind, sort of thing. And at that point there's a brief pause, and she puts her arm on Maggie's hand and says, I'm sorry, and it goes on to say something along the lines of, if he got stuck, he was going to find a way to let us know, or something like that. And right then we hear the same exact thing that we heard at the end of this episode, which is somebody at the gate screaming, "Open the gate."
Is it Glenn?
So that's the last thing that we heard, because it was when we came back and we saw Morgan coming out of that house and locking that gate.
Yes,
and he was leaving that wolf behind. We heard a little bit of commotion and somebody yelling, and Morgan's attention whips up, and we hear somebody yelling out in the distance, "Open the gate! Open the gate!" And it's very, very intense yelling. This must happen right now. Boom, the show ends. And this little sneak peek that I saw of episode 5 coming up, Deanna hears the same thing. She's up on top of the gate. She's having her little moment. She hears this conversation between Michonne, Sasha, and Maggie, and all of a sudden she hears somebody screaming, "Open the gate! Open the gate!"
I can tell you what it is, Josh.
It's Rick.
No,
it's Glenn. Here's my theory. We saw of Rick. He was in that Winnebago, about ready to get overran by the zombie horde, which he is, likely going to be just swarmed by any moment. And he ends up, I think he outruns the zombie horde. He kicks down the window of the Winnebago or something like that, bolts down the street, makes a wide right or something. I don't know. Basically hightails it under, and he's running. He's almost out of energy. The zombies are right on his feet. And he's screaming for somebody to open the gate, because if that gate's not open when he reaches it there, he is doomed. That's my theory.
I think it's a great theory. My theory is it's Glenn.
It's wrong.
He is in the dumpster, and he has a long 2x4 that he's using as a makeshift oar.
Down the street.
And damn it, he's tired. Open the gate.
All right. Well, we'll see just how close Tony and mine predictions are next week, guys.
I'll mention on at least on Google Plus. I'm sure on other social media, but where I saw it was Google Plus. There's people actually trying to fit under dumpsters and taking pictures of it and showing it on Google Plus. It's saying he wouldn't fit under the dumpster because it's not just our theory, Josh.
I said that last episode when we were talking about this. I was like, in that one view, it looks like there's not even enough space to crawl.
But
underneath.
I'll tell you, like I tell my wife, if it's in the script, it happens. Doesn't matter if it makes sense or not.
Yeah, it's true. It's
All right,
true.
guys. So you're gonna have to wait just like us next week. 60. What is it? 6:05.
6:05. Yeah,
And,
next week.
We'll be back in the here and now, and we'll get I guess it'll be kind of like the Jessie episode, but I think she's gonna have a mini episode. I don't think she's gonna have a whole
I think
Morgan
it's gonna be
episode.
5 or 10 minutes on her. Until the meantime, guys, make sure you head over to TonyandJosh.com to catch up on all the rest.
Have a great night.